It's just not possible for the American people to consider this upcoming political campaign and not take a serious look at where the candidates stand on the immigration question. Apparently, the national news media, at least what we used to call the news media, no longer views itself as an objective resource for reporting on what's happening. Because there's a story that moved on the Associated Press earlier today. I hope there's a link to it below my video here. And it says, AP fact check, which always should make you concerned. Trump wholly distorts Biden on immigration. And the article contains a series of references to Trump's statement in the Rose Garden the other day about what Joe Biden's positions are and what they would do as a practical impact, and denounces most of them as either fraudulent or misleading. Now, let's take a serious look at this campaign, okay? Joe Biden, hunkered down in his basement, apparently not having to face reporters more than occasionally, has laid out a broad immigration platform that should shock anybody who cares about immigration control and limits in this country. Effectively, what Joe Biden has said is that he's going to give amnesty to 11 million plus, or however many million illegal aliens are in the United States, regardless of how they got here or anything else. Maybe there'll be a cursory criminal background check, but he's basically said blanket pathway to citizenship and into the voting booth because he thinks they're going to vote Democrat, full stop. 11 million, 22 million, who knows the number? And the Associated Press somehow believes that during the course of that, there will continue to be robust interior immigration enforcement for all the people who are not covered by this blanket amnesty, which is everybody. All right, but they don't say that. They don't tell you that there won't be any immigration law enforcement. And of course, the mass amnesty incentivizes more illegal immigration. Now, the president pointing out that Joe Biden wants to stop all federal state cooperation on immigration law enforcement. Federal state cooperation, he wants to basically make all the states a sanctuary city, sanctuary state, a sanctuary country, effectively. He doesn't want states to cooperate at all with federal immigration law enforcement. What we see today in California, New York, Maryland, and elsewhere, he wants for the whole country. Now, the Associated Press claims that they would roll up just limited 287G agreements. But no, that's not really what's going to happen. Effectively, what Joe Biden wants to do is stop all interior enforcement. Now, candidates need to be answering these questions. Joe Biden, what would you do to stop illegal immigration? Okay, there's no answer, is there? There isn't any answer. There's no answer. He's talked a little bit about smugglers being investigated by traffickers, so we would stop the cross-border agreements with these Central American countries, Northern Triangle countries, so that they could focus on the really bad actors. That's about it. But basically, Joe Biden is responsible for the Wilberforce anti-trafficking law that has been used by the smugglers to bring juvenile aliens across the border into the United States by the hundreds of thousands. He helped pass that as a senator back into the mid-2000s. And having seen the consequences of that ridiculous law during the Obama administration, he actually flew down to Central America to try to convince them to stop doing what they were doing, exploiting a law that he passed, maybe with good motives, but which had devastating impacts. It created these caravans that we saw during the Obama and then Trump administrations. Does he have any plans to change that? No, he wants to go back to the status quo, which would have enabled the caravans to continue coming across the border. Does the Associated Press address that? Not at all. The Associated Press attacks Trump for saying that Biden would give aliens welfare, roll up the public charge bar that the Trump administration has reinvigorated. This basically says if you come to this country, you can't use welfare. If you're going to use welfare, we're not going to let you get a green card. That's what this basically says. Biden says that's not good enough. The Associated Press tries to hair split by saying, no, all Biden wants to do is say, well, if you're going to get on Medicaid, you should still be allowed to get a green card. Look, if you give amnesty to everybody here illegally, they're going to be eligible for the full panoply of benefits. Obviously, if you roll up the public charge bar, there won't be a kind of wealth test or ability to pay your own way test. That's very clear, but the Associated Press will not tell the American people the truth about that. So if you amnesty everybody here, if you give them immediate access to welfare, if you turn around and say, you know what, we're going to let smugglers come across, and he's going to roll back the asylum reforms that the Trump administration did to stop the massive hemorrhaging of asylum fraud across our southern border. The AP says, well, they're just going to roll back some of these oppressive Trump policies so that people can claim asylum. Look, these asylum laws have been abused by the hundreds of thousands. There are massive backlogs. The whole immigration court system is effectively dysfunctional, broken down against this absurd backlog. What is Joe Biden going to do to stop asylum fraud? Nothing. Okay, nothing. Not one thing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And not one reporter is going to ask him, what is he going to do to stop asylum fraud? What is Joe Biden going to do to stop illegal immigration? Not one thing, not one thing, not one thing. Not one thing has he had to say about the question of what he's going to do to stop illegal immigration. What is he going to do to stop employers from hiring illegal workers to take American jobs? Not one thing. He hasn't said one thing about that. He has no plan. What's he going to do to stop foreign workers from being used to basically take American jobs? I mean, it's all over the place. Everybody can see this, that the H-1B program is being massively abused by employers who bring in foreign workers under the H-1B program. American workers train their replacements and they get fired. What is Joe Biden going to do to stop that? What is Joe Biden's position with respect to Trump's suspending the H-1B admissions? He wants to resume them. He wants to go back to the usual course. He doesn't even seem to support what Dick Durbin is talking about, which is reforming the H-1B program to stop this kind of massive abuse. I mean, this has been a national scandal, what has happened with foreign workers in this country. If the coronavirus pandemic has illustrated anything in this country, it is the degree to which business community has latched on to foreign workers as a scam to displace American workers for their own benefit. And they use the argument that Americans are too lazy or stupid, or they're not available because they don't want to do this work. Well, maybe they don't want to do the work at those wages, but they certainly are willing to work, but they want to be paid a decent day's wage for a day's work. Somehow that's un-American now. So that we've exposed this massive scam. They continue to push for the H-1B program, even with 30, 40 million Americans out of work. What else has been exposed by the pandemic? Okay, the way colleges have now glommed onto foreign students as a way to expand their tuition base. Regardless of the impact on American students and long-term impact on Americans in these same career fields. Glomming on to foreign students, which then translate into a cheap labor program through the OPT and the H-1B program for employers. This dance of greed takes place at the expense of the American people. And when the president said, look, if you're not enrolled in a college, going to class, there's no reason why you need to be in the country. We're going to make you foreign students go back home. What happened? Harvard and all these big, very well-endowed schools sued and said to the president, even if these folks don't need to be in the country, we want them to be in the country because they're paying full tuition and we want them to stay here because our fat cat professors and their sinecures and their tenured, et cetera, they all need to be here. And we need to have them as cheap labor for teaching assistants and whatever else they use them for. And so this scam continues again, and they rolled back those changes on the foreign student program. I mean, the American people have an opportunity to see what this is all about. Now, the Associated Press is supposed to be an objective, I guess, news organization that reports on the facts. But this article is blatant political cover. It is blatantly dishonest, and it's not willing to tell people the practical effects of what the Biden campaign's positions actually would be. Now, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. FAIR doesn't endorse candidates, but what FAIR does do is tell you the practical impact of a particular policy position on the American people and the American nation. And the fact is that the composite positions that Joe Biden's campaign has issued now effectively represent mass amnesty, no interior enforcement, no real worksite enforcement, no serious southern border control, and essentially immediate access to welfare for all former illegal aliens. And then for people coming in, there's not going to be any significant screen to make sure you're not going to go on welfare, because the vast majority of people coming in through the family preference system today, that again, the Democrats do not seem to want to reform, don't make enough money to cover their costs to survive in a post-industrial superpower information society. And that's just the sad reality of the fact that a country like ours at this juncture does not need to be importing large-scale numbers of people with limited skills and education. It's a practical fact. Now, obviously, there are people who benefit economically. There are employers who pocket the wages, privatizing the profits, and then commonize the costs onto the rest of us in education and welfare spending and everything else. And employers want to continue this scam indefinitely. They want to continue the redistribution process to illegal immigration, and immigration overall represents. Yes, some immigrants come in who have great capacity to improve our productive potential. We have entrepreneurial immigrants who come in, and nobody wants to keep some of them out, certainly depending on who they are. Moving to a skills-based position, merit-based, would bring us in line with what most of the modern world is doing, but under dramatically lower numbers. And we obviously, as a nation, need to improve departure control. What is Joe Biden proposing to deal with the problem of massive visa overstays? Oh my goodness, there we are again, no answer. No answer. Visa overstays, illegal immigration across the southern border, interior enforcement, state and local cooperation, worksite enforcement. What does Joe Biden suppose do we do in order to deter people from coming illegally and making phony claims? Does he believe we should detain them during the pendency of the proceeding? What's his answer? Release them. He has an answer there. Release them into the society so that taxpayers have to spend unlimited hundreds of millions of dollars tracking down people here illegally. Joe Biden opposes most detention for illegal aliens. That means closing down detention centers, closing down certain facilities that are used to serve as a deterrent against fraudulent claims. Detention, civil detention, and immigration is not jail. An alien in civil detention can always go back home whenever he or she wants to. It's not the same thing as jail, but it is a way of guaranteeing that the government can find the person when it's time for their proceeding. What is Joe Biden's plan to actually accelerate the immigration court proceedings so that we don't have aliens waiting 4 or 5 years for a court hearing? Maybe he wants to hire a few more immigration judges, but in the end, it's a numbers game. You know, the more judges you hire, if you don't tighten up the standards, you have to accelerate the process so that it all happens within a 48-hour period or a 7-day period to final adjudication and then departure. You can't have this process drag on for years. Delay benefits the alien. Apparently the Biden campaign knows that. Democratic Party, obviously hostile to the whole idea of immigration control. What is their plan for dealing with the serious immigration problems this country faces? The Associated Press needs to write an article that lays out what exactly the Biden campaign plans to do to deal with the nation's immigration crisis. Clearly, they're happy to attack the president for everything he's doing, anything he is doing, certainly on the immigration platform. But again, this is dishonest political coverage, and it needs to be corrected. For more information on the different campaign positions, you can find them at fairus.org, fairus.org. I'm Dan Stein, President. Thanks for watching.